Hello, BookTube, and welcome to this live stream where I'm again joined by Steve Stark, John Davies, and after quite some time, Stephen Stoppard, where we're going to be discussing three of our favourite films from particular genres. And this month, it's going to be spy films. And just before we start properly, I'll just introduce my guests a bit. So first, we have Steve Stark, who is the author of A Hot Dose of Hell and Violent Ends, both of which I've reviewed and really enjoyed. And you should be able to find links to Amazon links to both those books in the description below. And also John Davies, this is his crime novella, which you can also find a link to on Amazon down below. And I've also reviewed it and really enjoyed this. And if you're a regular viewer of mine, you will immediately recognise Stephen, as he's been on the live stream, on various live streams since the general election last year. So overall, so these three gentlemen are very much returning guests to my channel. So with that, I will begin. And Steve, do you want to start with your first film?
Okay, yeah, we'll kick off with me. All right then, mate. What you got first there for me?
Well, it's up to you. Which one do you want to start with?
Don't mind. We'll go with Mission Impossible then,
Okay.
since it's current.
Yeah. There we go.
So, yeah. The first Mission Impossible, I still think is the best one by quite a bit. It's the one that has the most of the kind of the spy stuff, the double crossings, the sort of twisty turny stuff. I think Brian De Palma was a great choice to do it. I wish they'd been able to bring him back and do another one in the series. I remember when this one came out, they set us up by rerunning the old show. I think it was on Channel 4 at the time. I don't know if you guys remember that. They're rerunning the old show and setting us up with the idea of what it was, obviously, to get everyone hyped for the movie, as they often do. And I wound up going in with certain expectations, and then something that's cliche to say, but they were subverted immediately in the first act of that film. It's something I don't like that people do a lot now, but back then it was a real novelty and it was real shocking what they did, which was to kill the entire team apart from Tom Cruise in the opening scene. You get sort of introduced to this team and they're sort of populated by faces that you recognize as well. There's Emilio Estevez there's John Voight, and then they all get wiped out in this mission really on. And it really raises the stakes of the film very quickly, I think. It gives it a lot of intensity. It doesn't feel like, oh, this is going to be a romp. That's one of the really cool things about the Mission Impossible movies is the kind of the heist kind of elements that I like, the getting into the places that they shouldn't be able to get in and how they figure those things out. And yeah, that's the classic iconic moment from the first one, I think, where I'm suspended from the ceiling and can't touch the floor and can't even sweat on the floor or it's going to set the alarms off. It's a great moment. Have you got the next one?
Oh yeah.
So that's the team there that they set us up with. Like I say, we see Emilio Estevez there. You think, oh, he's going to be a major part of the film. It seems to be like he's going to be the comic relief. And John Voight, they named him after the character that was the main character in the TV show. So if you'd been watching the TV show beforehand, you think, oh, he's going to be important. He's the old mentor who's passing the torch. They do something very different with his character, which I won't spoil if anyone hasn't watched it. And the way that they do kill people as well in this is very, very Brian De Palma. It's very violent for what was, I think, a 12 certificate film at the time as well. So that was really cool. The sort of violent thriller and horror elements that he brought in there, because I remember being very shocked, not just by the fact that these characters all get killed, by the fact that it was quite brutal in the way it was done. Emilio in particular gets a really horrible death. If anyone remembers when he's stuck in the lift. I think there's a slide of that. Yeah. So he's running everything from the lift. He's in control of a lot of the electronics, or he thinks he is. and someone else has overridden what he's doing, and he's sat on top of the lift, hacked in, and they send the lift up and crush him. It's pretty shocking. So I really like the whole kind of thing of there being a team, and he does later on find another team and recruit another team to continue with his missions, and there's more to it than that. But yeah, this one by far it's got the right balance of action, thriller elements, the characters that they pick for this one, so it still stands at the peak for me. Sorry, John, you were going to go there.
No, so I was going to say I like the. They had all those glasses, didn't they? That also recorded the scenes, and I like the bits where they were showing one of the characters' point of view, kind of dying, and then he falls into the river, doesn't he? You can just see all the blood on his hands, and
that's right.
He sort of flips over, and then you kind of see that from a different angle a little bit later without kind of ruining anything. Yeah. So I thought that was a nice little touch, and very sort of like you said about the horror aspects to it, that point of view type killer.
Yeah,
those kind of point of view type killings and so on. So yeah, it's a good film. I think that vault scene's one of the, that must be one of the most iconic spy heist scenes in cinema at the moment. It still stands up, doesn't it? The tension that's there as he's trying to balance, and old Jean Reno's trying to hold him up, isn't he? And then the rat comes down the tunnel. Yeah. Yeah, really good.
And the scene at the end with the chase at the end with the helicopter. That I remember that very clearly as well. I think I must have seen this given that, as you say, Steve, it was a 12. It must have been on a Sunday afternoon on ITV, I think. I saw it. I really did enjoy it. Then I watched it subsequently a couple of times, and it does, as you say, stand up. Unlike some of the sequels to it, they have definitely not aged well, whereas this one has. This is still as fresh as it was when it came out in '96. I actually hadn't seen the TV series until relatively recently, and looking back at the film, you can see though they obviously changed certain elements, as you mentioned with John Voight's character. You can still see the lineage of the TV show in the film by the various set pieces that Tom Cruise goes through. And I think that was good. That's not so true of the subsequent films in the series.
What do you think of the other films, Steve?
I like quite a lot of them. I've rewatched them all recently in anticipation of going to see the most recent one.
Yeah.
And I got to Dead Reckoning, which is number 7.
Yeah.
And I could be off here. Someone might disagree with me, but I think it's really boring. I think it's a really boring movie. I think it's really long.
A bit too long, yeah.
It's really repetitive as well. There's lots of just people standing around explaining the plot. It's like it was a draft that they just went with and shot straight away.
Yeah.
It's over long, and the couple bits that are in it, the sort of big set scenes, they don't really live up to any of the stuff that's been in the other ones. I don't think. I think there were better scenes, especially like with the action or with the suspense, spectacles.
Yeah.
Like when he climbed the tower, the Burj Khalifa in number 4, that's probably the high point in terms of the stunts and everything. That's one of the best moments, and this doesn't have anything to match that. So it actually put me off going to see the next one, because I heard it's more of the same and it's a continuation of that story. So I didn't bother. I went and watched Final Destination instead.
Yeah.
Had a good laugh.
Yeah. I need to go and see that one. I went to see the Final Reckoning last weekend.
Yeah. What do you think?
I'm sort of with you on the Dead Reckoning part. It was a bit overlong. This is, I would say, better, but there are elements where it's more of the same. It's still a bit too long. They could have shaved at least 40 minutes off it. But that being said, it was a decent enough round out for the series.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced about Hayley Atwell's character in it. That she seemed a poor substitute for Rebecca Ferguson's.
It's like
Ilsa.
Did she quit or something? So they just sort of crowbarred her in.
That's what you can almost see that from the script. You think you sort of sat there going like, what did she do to piss off Tom Cruise or something? But I think it was I think she was committed to filming June 2, or she made that choice because if you do get to watch the second part, the Hayley Atwell's character, her arc, is very much Ilsa Faust's character and her arc. It's the arc that she deserved, if you see what I mean, rather than bringing this new character. So I kind of had mixed feelings about it. I mean, it was good. It was entertaining, worth seeing on the big screen. And like I said, a nice round out to the series, perhaps. But yeah, not as good as some of the earlier entries, I don't think, overall.
Stephen, what did you think of Mission Impossible?
Embarrassingly, I've never seen any of them. So, I was sitting here very quietly. But yeah, they are on the bucket list. But I've just, for some reason, I've never got round to them. I like Tom Cruise and all his films, but yeah, I've just not seen those.
Oh, okay. What I'll do is I'll just go through a couple of comments, and then we'll go on to John's film. So just bear with me a second. So, just a note. Can't be here for the live, gentlemen. We'll catch up. We'll catch a replay. I'm looking forward to it. Fair enough, mate. Hello, Martin.
Hi, Martin. Cheers for popping in.
Tibo.
Hello, mate.
And this is a name that none of us will, well, at least me, Steve and John will not recognise at all.
Hey up there, Jeremy. How's it going?
And never really liked the second Mission Impossible movie.
Yeah.
John did it know Davies. Yeah.
I think that's the worst one myself. I think I like John Woo films, but I think that was just not one of the better ones.
No, I rewatched that one, and I really liked it at the time when I first watched it. But I was 17 then. What do I know? So, watching it, it had like Limp Bizkit in the soundtrack and two guns. Everyone firing two guns in slow mo and doing high kicks. That's great when you're 17. But yeah, it's definitely the weakest. And rewatching it, it's not even that fun. There's a real lag between the action scenes. There's a really long bit in the middle where it's all about Dougray Scott and Tandy Newton, and it just goes on and on and on before you get another big set piece. Is like a 40-minute to an hour sort of period before things start kicking off, and it becomes like a John Woo movie. There's that whole chunk there that's just kind of, you just sort of yawn through.
Yeah, I don't really have. It's one of those. That's one of those films that I can't really remember an awful lot about. I mean, it's a while. It's a good 20 years, I think, since I've seen it. But even then, there's nothing memorable in that film that I can really recall. I can only think about a motorbike chase. That's about it, when he's spinning around firing his guns again, and that's
pretty much it. Yeah, there's a cool bit where they have the motorbike chase, and that's actually really good. That's when it goes full John Woo. And there's a bit at the start where Tom's climbing up a cliff face, and that's really cool as well. And that sort of kind of sets him up for what he becomes in the later films, where he's doing the more extreme kind of things. It took that part, some of those elements from the first one, and ramped it up so that later on it fits when he's doing some of those bigger spectacles,
Because the only thing I remember that from the second film is that Anthony Hopkins is in it at the start.
Yeah. See, I can't remember that.
Everything else is just a blank, to be honest. Yeah,
it was.
Hello?
That's
Where
my
would you rate? Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's my wife. Yeah.
Was that a business there? Was it the?
Yeah, she makes jewelry.
Yeah,
I made jewelry, so that's her.
Nice.
She likes Mission Impossible too. She thought that was the best one. So,
doesn't she also like Alien Resurrection though as well?
She does. She likes Strange Choices.
Yeah. Hey, we like what we like,
I'm a strange choice, mind you. She married me, so there you go.
Not to.
I shouldn't knock it.
not to sort of say leak anything personal, but Steve's wife, I'm glad to hear that you're getting better. And yes, I do remember that bit now in the second film. It does, yeah.
It is still quite a. You will sweat watching that scene. I think even if you're bored of everything else, that opening scene where he's climbing on the rocks is pretty intense.
Where would you rate the other films, Steve? What order would you rank the films, do you think?
I would go number 1 as the best. Number 4 is the next one after that. That's the fun one with where they bring Simon Pegg into it more, and all the gadgets start to fail. Everything they've managed to get to take on this mission seems to be, messed up. So when he's trying to climb, he's trying to scale the Burj Khalifa, he's got those gloves that help him stick to the glass.
Yeah.
But one of the gloves keeps conking out on him halfway up, and he's having to try. He can't rely on it. So that's and there's lots of stuff like that in it that makes it a little bit. It gives it a different twist, a lot of humor. That's also an added tension, because the one thing you could always rely on was the gadgets.
Yeah. Because their masks fails, don't they? And I think that scene, when they're doing the kind of two simultaneous ploys, if you like, on different floors, where one's pretending to be the seller, one's pretending to be the buyer. Yeah, I thought that was a great sequence. I think that's one of my favourite ones in the films as well.
And then I put the 5 and 6 kind of tied. They're very similar, those two. Obviously, they were the ones that were done by Chris McQuarrie. I mean, that's one of the things that I prefer about the earlier ones as well, is that they used a different director every time for the first 4. Then they get to 5, and he sticks with McQuarrie all the way through then to the end. And I think for me, I would have preferred to have different people still coming in.
Yeah.
And it having a slightly different flavour every time.
Yeah. He seemed to go through a bit of I suppose he's still in it, the kind of Chris McQuarrie phase, didn't he? Because he was doing the Jack Reacher films with him as well.
Yeah.
Edge of Tomorrow, he'd written that, hadn't he, McQuarrie? I think, he seems to bring him in for script rewrites and so on if he's not directing. So definitely, they've definitely got a little partnership going at the minute, haven't they?
Yeah.
It'd be nice to see what other directors would have done with the series, though, their sort of take on the missions and on the characters.
At one point, Fincher was going to do one, David Fincher. I think that would have been interesting. That would have been more probably similar to like the De Palma version, I think, the De Palma one. But it's not going to happen now. I think the series is done, so
I'm
streaming anyway.
I'm just going through a couple more of the comments. Joe Kelly, I believe. First saw Mission Impossible film in theatre, 1995. I remember leaving 2 minutes to get more popcorn and went home. When I returned, I'd missed such crucial scene in the film.
Joe, by the way, I don't know if you've reviewed any of his stuff on the channel or not, but Joe's a very funny author. He writes really absurd, comical stuff, like Curse of the Werepimp and things like that. So,
I've got that one on my list. I need to have a look at some of his stuff. Yeah, I need to get hold of that. And
I've not
the type of stuff Troma would have made as a film back when they were still had balls,
I've not read any of Joe's stuff yet, but I did see Curse of the Werepimp on Amazon, and when I do get around to reading his stuff, that's the first thing I'm going to read, just because of that name and the description. Okay. Yeah, I say I've not seen too many of them. After I saw the first and second one, and then I saw one of the later ones, and I haven't really kept up too much recently with them. At some point, I'm gonna have to rewatch them all just to see what they're like. To be honest. That's quite right. And, I like 3 for Abrams spin. It's had Philip Seymour Hoffman, he was a good bad guy, great actor. Abraham started things and never sticks around. Exhaust, yes, definitely. The biggest criticism of the Star Wars sequel trilogies, they started that without any idea how to end it, which explains everything about the subsequent two films.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I'd probably stop your comment there, Aaron. That's the worst thing about it is they started it.
Yeah, yeah, because that first film isn't exactly anything great to write home about, but compared to the other two, it is a better standard. Crap.
Yeah.
So with that, we'll move on to John's first pick. Which one do you want to talk about first, John?
Body of Lies.
Okay. There we go.
So this one, has everybody seen this one at all? Or have you seen this?
I haven't.
No. So this one's about. So it's a kind of post-Iraq war spy thriller. So quite modern. I would say relatively grounded in reality, as much as these films can be. So you've got Leonardo DiCaprio and Russell Crowe play CIA agents. DiCaprio's the kind of field operative who's tracking down a terrorist cell led by, I think his name's Al Salim, who's like an offshoot of Al Qaeda, very, very successful terrorist who's responsible for several bombings. Russell Crowe's his boss. And the film sort of focuses on, I suppose, like the contrast between the two different approaches that the two spies have got, if you like. Russell Crowe's very much an aggressive, bullish CIA veteran who wants to, he's very reliant on technology. So you've got the satellites, the surveillance and so on. And DiCaprio's more of he's an Arabist. He's more of a human operator, human intelligence operator who relies on building relationships, slower sort of approach to it, engaging in trust, cooperating with his other intelligence agents. And it's about those two sort of contrasts, if you like. So in the story, he's tracking down this Al Salim. He gets wounded in Iraq when he's trying to find a safe house, but then further intelligence then leads them to Jordan, where he's sent, and he meets up with Mark Strong's character, who's the head of the Jordanian intelligence, Hani Salam, I think it is, his name is. Really good performance by Mark Strong. Just that he's always good in pretty much everything he does. Even though he's wearing a slightly dodgy sort of hairpiece there, but very, very suave, very smooth. Always on the ball with it. And this is a scene where they find a member of the safe house. So where the terrorist cell is located, they've got a safe house that they've got under surveillance, and Jordanian intelligence identifies one of the men. So they lift him, drag him out in these cars into the desert, and he's just surrounded there by all these goons in the dark suits. Thinks it's the end, and Mark Strong's character goes up to him, hands him a phone, and says, answer it, talk on it. And it's the guy's mother on the other end. And you start off thinking to yourself that, right, he's obviously kidnapped the mother, has got a gun to her head or something like that. And he's going to say to him, right, you're working for me now. But instead, the mum's like really happy. She's singing her son's praises because the intelligence service have set it up. They've taken her out of the Palestinian camps, put her in a house, given her loads of money, and they've made it appear as if it's her son that's done that for her. So she's all grateful. She's like, oh, he takes the phone off him and said, see, you've made your mother proud. And basically you're with me now. I own you now. So just those clever little touches that are in this film, I think are ones that make it quite enjoyable for me. Just those slight different elements that you don't often see in some of these spy thrillers. There's a nice balance of the kind of tradecraft and the action as well. I wouldn't say it's not an action film as such. It's not a caper sort of film, or an enjoyable one perhaps as much as a Mission Impossible or a Bond film. But it's got a nice balance to it. I remember watching this one where it wasn't long I'd got back from Iraq, and there's one scene where DiCaprio's pretending to be a local, and he approaches a group of terrorists. He's dressed in the dish dash and everything. He's pretending that his car's broken down, and they ask him where he's from, and he says, "I'm from Baghdad." And one of the guys goes, "Where in Baghdad?" And DiCaprio's character says, "Oh, Rusafa." And that was such a real kind of touch, because Rusafa used to be one of the areas on the banks of the river, and that's where all the bad dudes were from, basically. And it was a question that we used to ask people when we had them in was, where you're from? Are you from Kark or Rusafa? And if they said Rusafa, we had a good sort of, yeah, okay, you're probably a wrong one, So that was a nice little touch to see in a film. I've never seen that sort of thing before. And it's got those little elements through it all the way through, really. Just a good, I'd definitely say worth watch if you've not seen it. I think it's on Netflix at the minute anyway, so you can stream it for free if you've got Netflix, obviously. And just some good little action scenes where you see the ruthlessness, if you like, of DiCaprio's character in order to achieve the mission, and where there's that constant contrast and conflict between him and Russell Crowe. DiCaprio does a great performance in it as well. I think he's always dependable. This guy, he's not an actor that I'd seek out necessarily and watch all of his films, but I think every film I've seen, he's been excellent in. So yeah, very very sort of convincing portrayal, I think, by DiCaprio.
Yeah, I've seen this before, but it was a very long time ago. But I do remember enjoying it. Have you ever read the original novel, the adapted from?
I didn't finish it. I think I remember reading it around about the time that the film came out, and I'm not too sure how much it differs from the film. I can't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure I didn't finish it, and I then lost it somewhere. So, have you read it, Alan?
Yeah, I did read it. I actually read it before I saw the film. From what I can remember, I think the film's reasonably faithful. One thing I did notice about the book is that the plot in the book, which is clearly based on Operation Mincemeat during the Second World War. Yeah. For those who don't know, was an operation the British intelligence ran that Ian Fleming came up with, that a dead body would be dropped into the off the Spanish coast to wash up there with information as a Royal Marine officer who was allegedly taking part in the planning invasion of Europe. But all documentation was false. It was made to look like the invasion was going to take place on I think, Sardinia instead of Normandy, and it worked. And there's a very good film from the 50s called The Man Who Never Was about it, with Commander, where the man who ran the operation, Commander Montague, is portrayed. That's a really good film as well. But when I was reading the book, I noticed that was clearly partly because of references to mincemeat in the book, was sort of what the plot of the book was inspired by.
Did they replicate that in the book? As in, like, did they set up a dead body as such? Because in the film, the kind of ploy that they use is that they basically fit somebody up to be a competing terrorist cell, hoping that this will draw out the one that they're after, as he'll be kind of I suppose threatened by the opposition almost, and try and make contact with them. So was that part of?
I can't quite remember if it is a dead body or not. It's like throughout it, they do make one or two references to mincemeat and the way the operation's been done. Again, from what I can remember, I should say the last time I read the book was 2008 or something like that. So it's been quite some time. But so I can't quite remember. But I do just remember the film being reasonably faithful as far as most Hollywood films are to the original book. So.
I don't want to ask you too direct, John, but is there any other little bits in the film that kind of resonate with you as being very accurate and very true to some of what you experienced? Are there any other little moments or little quirks about it, or characters or anything like that? Yeah,
I think these are strange little things, obviously, but so DiCaprio, is a lot of the time his characters start off with he's in Iraq. and he's kind of living a sort of what they call natural cover. You know, he's living out in the environment. It's not quite clear whether he's actually pretending to be an Iraqi, because he clearly doesn't look like one, but he's cutting around in the street clothes. And what I'd liked about that was he actually looked, the clothing that he was wearing seemed authentic kind of Iraqi street clothes, as in like with the Western style that they would adopt, rather than when you see some of these films, they often look too well dressed in a strange way. I know it's a bit of a strange thing to say, but they almost look too cool. You know, that the clothes are just a little bit too cool. But he looks pretty shoddy in some of these scenes. You know, just wearing like cheap jumpers and, you know, like shiny jackets and so on like that. So he doesn't look like a cool character. He looks like authentically that he could actually blend in with those kind of street clothes. So I thought that was quite good. The bit about the, you know, obviously the locations, the areas within Iraq as well. And then his overall approach was kind of rang true in terms of when you see his relationship between DiCaprio and Mark Strong, building that rapport. He's aware of sort of Arab conventions, if you like, in terms of behavior, in terms of showing certain respect to your elders and so on, which is, again, that complete contrast to Russell Crowe's character, who at one point comes kind of bulldozing in to sort of take over the operation and completely blows it at one point. So those things stood out in as much as you'll sometimes see these spy films where you've got the kind of rogue operator, if you like, the maverick, who's just doing his own thing and so on. And this was good in that he was very much a lone operator, but he knew how to behave, if you like. He didn't, his own ego, or DiCaprio's character's own ego, wasn't put first. You know, he knew to defer to the Mark Strong character, which is what you would naturally do if you're working in someone else's area and so on. So little, it was just little things like that, really. Likewise, there's a couple of little things that you think, oh, he shouldn't have done that. There's a subplot where he's courting a local woman. I'll butcher the actress's name if I try and pronounce it. She's in Extraction. You probably recognise her when you see her that's there. Anyway, there's a scene where he goes round for dinner at her house with her sister and her two kids. And you think that wouldn't really happen, you know, not without a male member of the family there, him as a stranger. And then he puts his hand out for her to shake, which again, he'd known not to do. His character would. So there's those little, I appreciate it's probably the visual shorthand to show the difference between the cultures more than anything else. Or likewise, he could have been playing 4D chess as a character and not betraying that he knew too much about the cultures overall. So I'll give that one a pass. But yeah, it's nice little touches in this one. There's some more little touches in the next films that I've chosen as well, that I could talk about if you wanted me to talk about that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Stephen, have you seen Body Voice?
I'm afraid I haven't seen this one either. I have to note these down and catch up.
That's a good thing about these live streams, though, when you find films that you've not actually watched and you think, she's like, all right, I'll give that one a go. That's good.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So I'll just go through these one comments. Solid film, much more grounded, suspenseful. Yeah. As I say, sometimes since I've seen it, but that really true to me. So with that, if there's nothing else to say, I'll then move on. Stephen, with your first pick. Which one of your three do you want to start with, Stephen?
He's got his mic off there.
Yeah. Oh, you're muted at the moment, Stephen.
Sorry, forgive me. Sorry, I'll start on Casino Royale because that's a bit different to the other two.
Okay.
which I think are both Le Carre's. So
Yeah.
so I just chose that because it's one of the first spy films I ever saw, and it's sort of formative experience. So I'd really enjoy it. Of course, it's a Bond. And of course, it's based on the 1953 book by Ian Fleming, which is the first ever Bond novel, and it's Daniel Craig's sort of debut as James Bond. I imagine a lot of viewers will have seen it, but I must have seen it about 5 times, and it's just a good solid film. I think obviously it starts off with excuse me, with how James Bond gets his 00 in the Czech Republic, and then his first sort of big mission tracking. And then I think that scene's from Madagascar, I think, which is of course famous. That of course parkour was, I think, had a bit of a fad in the mid noughties. So of course they had a big extended parkour scene in the film, which made quite an impression on me as a child. And but yeah, the plot of the film is obviously that basically Bond has to have a high stakes casino game with Le Chiffre, who's played by Mads Mikkelsen, who's this dodgy banker who funds terrorist groups around the world. Although it will later transpire that he's actually part of a sort of sinister, bigger organization called Spectre. But basically, the plan is to make sure he loses this poker game to basically bankrupt him, and then he'll have to cooperate with MI6 to avoid being, bumped off by his creditors. But without revealing too much, obviously it doesn't quite go according to plan. And there's all, of course there's Vesper Lind, who's Bond's main love interest in the film, played by Eva Green, who was of course a lot of things at that time. I don't know if I'd like to sort of say much about her role in the plot, but she's basically a Treasury representative who funds Bond during the game, who later turns out to not be all that she seems. Excuse me. And well, look, it's I think it's probably the best of the Craig Bond films. Oh, of course, there's a famous torture scene with Craig and sorry, with Bond and Le Chiffre. Excuse me. But I think so. I think it's the best of the Craig Bond films, and I'd say probably in the top 5 of all the Bond films that have been done. But it's a sort of personal favorite for me. It's got sort of action, and it's got a plot that's sort of constantly changing. Lots of characters, lots of scenes, lots of good-looking women. I think it's a very enjoyable watch.
Yeah, it's. I think it's the best, as you say, Stephen, the best of Craig's Bond films, and as an adaptation, it is really good. They've obviously modernised it from the original 50, I think 53, 52 novel, which is very much a Cold War novel. The chief in that is effectively the treasurer for a communist trade union that, if the Cold War went hot, would act as a fifth column inside France for the Soviets. And he's obviously, in the book, trying to bet on win at cards to repay the Soviets before they find out he has effectively fleeced them. And in the film, obviously, it's he's an international financier supporting terrorism, and so that it's a good sort of transition between the two in terms of trade behaviours. One thing I do criticise about the film is the fact that in the film, Bond's portrayed as being a brand new 00, whereas in the book he's been a 00 for quite some time, and so having him being a brand new agent to me seems a bit premature. I've always thought that if he was this newly minted, they wouldn't have sent him on a job like this. Whereas in the book, because he's been a 00 for, think about chronology, about, let's say, 6 years, sending him off to go up against the Sheik wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I know you'll probably have more thoughts because you've read all the books, haven't you, Aaron?
Yeah.
Because he was quite a sort of controversial pick at the time, wasn't he, Craig?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't look or anything like him, and his Bond doesn't really behave anything like what book Bond behaves like, from what I've heard. And I think there's a friend of mine who's a big sort of fan of the book says he's not really ever been a fan of Craig as Bond, and his argument's always been that he's a bit too like a sort of British Jason Bourne compared to book Bond, and then the sort of Sean Connery films. But I mean, I'm less purist. I thought they were good. I thought they were good novel take on the series. For the noughties, because I think they had got a bit played out under Pierce Brosnan. I would argue that they'd sort of got into a bit of a staid formula, and I think it was an interesting move to sort of jump it up. Although I will say I think he was Bond for far too long, Craig. And the last couple of films, I think, didn't really cut the mustard, so to speak. But I think Casino Royale was pretty good all round.
This is for me. This is the only of the Daniel. I've only seen 3 of the Daniel Craig ones, and this is the only one I actually liked. I enjoyed this one. I do agree with what everyone says about him not being very Bond-like. It does feel a bit that way. It is a bit more. It's a bit more mopey, he's a bit more po-faced. It doesn't have the kind of slickness or smoothness or sense of humor of the previous Bonds. It doesn't have any of that, which is something that I think is an essential ingredient of the character. But this one in particular was pretty decent, and I was going with it. I was waiting for him to become that Bond, because obviously this is like an origin. And it didn't feel like they were going that way. It felt more like they were going the other way. Like he continued to get more mopey in the ones that I saw. I didn't get to the very end, obviously. Didn't get to the last 2, but you've already said, Stephen, they're not quite that good. So I don't think I've missed too much. But
I mean, if you thought this one was too mopey, yeah, I'd probably give the last couple a miss.
So I think that's one of the great things about the Bond films. Is why they put a smile on people's faces a lot of the time. Is the quips, the gadgets, the kind of outrageousness of it sometimes. And there's a fine line. There's a line to walk there. There's a line between Pierce Brosnan having a remote control BMW and some of the really silly stuff, like when he was the
invisible
in his
car.
surfer, the invisible car, and like surfing a tsunami and stuff like that. That was all went way too far. But somewhere in between is where the sweet spot is for Bond, I think. And,
I think that's right. I just thought, I think I'd probably say that I'd actually agree as a Bond film, it's probably not that good, but I think as a sort of action spy film, I think Casino Royale, I quite enjoy it. I mean, who's your sort of favorite Bond out of interest?
Connery.
Oh, yeah,
always Connery.
Yeah.
I do like most of them, but yeah, Craig is my least favorite, but I totally agree with you. This is a good, solid movie, and it is fun, and I just wish they'd evolved him into more of a Connery style Bond instead of going, continuing down that route.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I thought this one brought Bond back a little bit anyway from the whatever the last Pierce Brosnan one was.
Die Another Day.
Sorry,
Die Another Day.
Yeah, with the invisible car and so on, and then we had that bit of a gap. And I did think this was a kind of triumphant return. I agree with what everyone else is saying as well about he's not necessarily a Bond, more of a British Bourne. But I think it must have been a reaction to the Bourne films anyway and their success that they decided to go down this route with the Bond character, perhaps. Because I think we'd moved into that kind of gritty series of sort of spy and adventure and action films anyway. But I really enjoyed this one. This is, again, one of my favourite Craig Bond films, the other one being Skyfall. I didn't much care for the other Craig Bond films that Craig had done. Really, it's only Casino Royale and Skyfall that I really enjoyed, and I thought he was actually good in. I thought he came close to the classic Bond in Skyfall, close to it. But I know what you mean, Steve. He's never quite got there with the, didn't quite have the swagger or the charm, did he? Not quite. He was just almost as if he hated being a 00 a lot of the time. There's that underlying sense that he really didn't like his job as such. But I thought this was great. Good storyline to it. Has got a record-breaking stunt, hasn't it? The number of flips that a car has done. So yeah, really, really good entry overall. I think it's certainly a film I can always watch again whenever it's on TV. I can put that on and enjoy it.
Yeah, 100%.
I think it's actually got one of the better Bond songs in it as well, because I'm a Chris Cornell fan. So there you go. That's
one thing I just will say that Stephen mentioned that parkour was quite popular at the time, and that's quite true. And you know how popular it was because not long after Casino Royale came out, there was a parkour scene on the bill. It's on the bill,
I can't imagine Tosh Lines like chasing after the criminal like Bond did in this somehow.
I'd love to see it.
I think the episodes are actually on YouTube somewhere. You can watch it. Just go back to Body Wise. John and I looked up the actress name.
Yeah. I'm not doing that one.
Do you know this theory about the Rock film, the Nicolas Cage film?
Yeah. I think Martin's spot on. It's supposed to be Bond, isn't it? It's the Connery Bond. He got captured, and it's a secret Bond film, isn't it? Yeah.
Thing is though, if you believe in that, then you're falling into the hands of these people that say that, Bond's just a code name. We can make him whoever we want. Stuff like that. I think there's I get it. I like the Bond. I like the idea that The Rock is a Bond film. I do like that. Great.
Right then, so I'll move on to my first film. So just a second. This is probably the most unusual one on the of all the films that we're shown here, because I think it's the only one that's set before the Second World War, and it's Rogue Male from 1976 with Peter O'Toole playing the main character. It's based on the 1939 novel of the same name by Jeffrey Household, and the story involves Peter O'Toole's character going off to Germany to assassinate Hitler, and fails. But then he gets captured by the SS, tortured, and they're about to kill him. And then he escapes from where they're about to kill him and gets back to England, where his uncle tells him, played by the late Alistair Sim, that he can't be protected, and so he has to go on the run. And goes and hides out in the West Country, where he is followed by a German agent, British man played by John Stanek, who's working for the Germans to hunt him down and kill him. And the main character has to survive this, and eventually, he survives a significant portion of the second half of the film by living underground and sort of living off the land. It's not the first time that Rogue Male has been adapted to film. It was adapted in the 40s by Fitz Lang called Manhunt, which is a 1941 film with George Sanders playing the John Standing character. It's really well done in this version because it's very much set in Birmingham period, though as with the 1941 film, it does make it clear that the person the main character is assassinating is Hitler. Though in the book, if you read it, it could also be Joseph Stalin who's assassinated because the character goes into the foreign country which is now named via the Polish border. So it could be one or the other. However, that said, it does do a really good job of showing the character through his various difficulties, both in Germany and in England, and it's really well done. Peter O'Toole plays the character really well, and he is very much a very sort of archetypal English, upper class Englishman of the period. He's very much what was referred to at the time as sort of clubland hero in the mould of somebody like Richard Hannay or Bulldog Drummond, and you get a very good sense of that. And interestingly, Harold Pinter is in the film as Peter O'Toole's solicitor, who gets killed at one point in the film, which is interesting. Because I think, I can remember, this was actually a film made by the BBC, one of their first films that they ever made. So it's interesting for that. And Alistair Sim playing the main character's uncle is quite entertaining. He's only in about 2 scenes, but he's very, very funny. So have any of you actually seen this version of it?
I haven't, no. Read the book, but not seen any of the adaptations.
Yeah, it's well worth a watch. Also, the 1941 version, Manhunt, is well worth a watch, though that's somewhat different. I haven't seen that in quite some time.
Always very interesting picks from you, Aaron. You always pick stuff I've literally never heard of, but it sounds really interesting every time.
And I should say this version of this adaptation of Rogue Male is free on YouTube to watch.
Cool.
You just put in Rogue Male 1976, it should come up. Well, I've got nothing else to say about this, so if anybody else hasn't, I can move on to Steve's next pick. Okay. Just bear a second. Steve, which one do you want to talk about now?
Let's go with True Lies.
Okay.
Okay, so this one, very simple, lots of fun. Arnold is basically James Bond, except he's got a wife and a kid, and they don't know that he's James Bond. They think he's a computer salesman. And it's about how the sort of 2 sides of his life wind up interconnecting in comical and action-packed ways. So there's Tia Carrere, babe of the 90s. What happened to Tia Carrere? Where is she? She should have been in a lot more films, I think. Yeah. But she's a great femme fatale in this movie. And there's Arnold doing the Bond thing where he's snuck into this ball where all these dodgy people and military types are hanging out, and he's gone in there to recover some secrets and get out, and that leads to sort of the first big action scene, which is as Bond as it gets. It's Arnold running down the ice in a tuxedo, being chased by guys on skis and on snow skis, trying to shoot him down, and it's a lot of fun, that part. Jamie Lee Curtis, so she plays Arnold's wife in the movie, and she's excellent. She's every bit as much the star of the movie as he is. Really, is very much a 2-hander, and she has no idea, obviously, what he is, and she's quite a sort of bored but quite repressed woman living quite a sort of stiff life, and she gets involved by quite a comical way in Arnold's life and finds out in Arnold's sort of spy life and finds out about it. This part here is a particularly excellent stunt that they did, where they're in a limo that's about to drive off a bridge, and Arnold sort of plucks her from the roof of the limo while hanging from a helicopter. And a lot of it, well, the majority of it is practical stunt work, all of it, and it's an amazing sequence to watch. It's really cool. Jamie Lee Curtis obviously wasn't the one who was on top of the limo in this scene, but she did dangle out of the helicopter for the subsequent shots. So yeah, it's a really cool moment. And she's really funny in the film. I didn't know Jamie Lee Curtis was funny. I'd only really seen her in Halloween before this. And the way the arc of her character, the way she transforms from being the kind of like uptight, quite nerdy woman to becoming, when she does the part where she gets sent on the mission to seduce it's just, I'm kind of spoiling the film by saying too much about it, but yeah, she definitely goes on a hell of a transformation to the end where she's actually quite competent, and she's joining Arnold on his missions. And there he is, the great Bill Paxton. He shows up on every time we do one of these live streams, I realized.
Yeah.
And he's one of the funniest parts of the film. So he actually is posing as a spy to try and seduce Arnold's wife. That's his, and what he really is a used car salesman. And Arnold finds out about all this and is obviously not too pleased. And Paxton's character is so greasy and hilarious in this. It's definitely it's one of his standout roles, I think. He just really runs with it. Yeah, and again with this one, there's so much comedy in it. It delivers in all the comedy, but it also really delivers in the action. Like the spectacle of the movie is mental. Like this part here where he goes up in the jump jet to rescue his daughter from the top of the building and the terrorists there. A lot of that was practical effects. Not that they had the plane flying, but what they did was they used like a life-size model, and they were dangling it from a crane and like swinging it around the building and stuff. It's absolutely insane. While James Cameron zipped around in a helicopter filming it. So there's stunt people crawling around on top of this thing at this height. It's still really impressive to see, and it's not something you'll probably see in movies again, this kind of stuff. So definitely worth it. And yeah, there's the villain. You're fired. At the end there, getting fired out of the missile. One of the things I thought about that was really funny about this was the villains. The villains were really brutal, really violent, but they were also played for laughs. And it's something, again, that they wouldn't dare do nowadays. But the terrorist characters are actually really hilarious. They have a lot of like really funny, like slapstick moments and stuff. Like the bit where there's a few of them and they're in a crashed van, and it's teetering on the edge of a broken bridge. And they're all like, oh, we're going to go. And it sort of stops teetering and they're all laughing like, hey, we're going to be all right. And a big pelican comes and lands on the bonnet and tips them all in. It's like something out of Looney Tunes. It's really funny. So I really enjoy that as well. I don't think they'd ever have the guts to play something like that for laughs now. But it is really funny.
Yeah. The bit with the bit where he's filming Art Malik's speech.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's doing the big speech, the broadcast, and he's got the video camera and the battery's running out. You can see his hand, you can see the battery's flashing, you can see his hand shaking, he starts sweating.
I haven't seen this film in years, but this one I remember very clearly, just because of how funny it was. And I subsequently learned that Art Malik really enjoyed making the film, despite the fact that he doesn't like playing sort of stereotypical Muslim characters. And part of the reason he likes the film is because at the time that he got cast, the Inland Revenue was after him for about 50,000 quid in back taxes. He did the film and he paid all that off.
I think Tom Arnold was good in this as well, I thought, as his partner. he had some really funny lines in it, especially the bit with what was the bit when he's I think he's Arnold comes out when he thinks that Jamie Lee Curtis is having this affair, and he comes out all stunned, doesn't he? And he's like, "Oh, Helen," and he's like, "Come on, spit it out. She's having an affair." And he just goes, "Ha ha! Welcome to the club," stuff like that. Just laughs with him. Yeah, it's they've got. I think they had a good. It's a shame they didn't do another film really with especially the way it ended and the way it was because it almost feels as if this could have been another franchise, a little bit like Mission Impossible or something like that, with a little bit more humour to it. But yeah, great film. That's and I know you mean that opening scene's fantastic though, isn't it? That chase through the snow, where he's when he's sort of shooting at them and falls over, skids down on his back, he's still blasting away, shooting at all these bad guys on the skis and the snowmobiles and so on. And the chase through the city I thought was really good. The chase on horseback versus motocross bike, up in a lift, across a roof. It's bonkers, absolutely bonkers. But
it's a crazy scene.
Film. Yeah,
Arnold did a lot of that himself as well from his days of like riding the horses on Conan. It's one of the drawbacks, unfortunately, of HD. They recently only just brought out the Blu-ray.
Right.
I only ever seen it on a dodgy VHS, which was actually a pirate copy when I was a kid. That was how I first saw it. It was one of those ones, where people used to go into a cinema and record it on a camcorder. It was one of those. But whoever done it, they also designed a box and made it look very nice. And I'd seen it like that. And then when it came out, I wound up getting it on DVD, and they edited the hell out of it. Like they did a lot of Arnold's films back then, and they cut loads of the violence out for some reason.
Yeah. So
I hadn't seen a very good quality copy until very recently. And I was watching it the other day, and you constantly see when it's Arnold on the horse, stuntman on the horse, Arnold on the horse. Every time it cuts, you can tell which one it is. But you can totally see the reason why some of the stunts had to be done by someone else, because some of them are crazy.
Yeah.
But it's kind of cool to see the amount that he actually did himself as well.
Yeah.
Stephen, have you seen True Lies?
I have indeed, and I've a bit of a nostalgia trip. Actually, remembering Jamie Lee Curtis's seduction dance, which I think every teenage boy should see at some point. I don't think you've really it's part of your preparation for adulthood.
That and Trading Places.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. No, it's great, and because am I right in thinking he was in one of the Roger Moore Bonds as well, wasn't he? Art Malik.
Yes, he was. Yeah,
he was a good guy, wasn't he? In one of those?
Yeah. I think he normally plays goodies because I think his because he what's it called? Jewel in the Crown as well, wasn't he? I think also he's one of the main sort of good characters. So yeah, I think he had quite a bit of fun doing this as playing a villain.
Do you remember what he was in that Bond movie?
He was some sort of sheikh or something, I think. I know. Was he an Afghan?
Yes. Yeah, it was Living Daylights. He was the Afghan. He was the Mujahideen leader.
Yes, that's right. And it turns out he'd gone to Oxford or something at the same time as James Bond or something ridiculous. And he's now a Mujahideen leader in there. But that's the one that's dedicated to the Taliban or something at the end, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's Hollywood had a brief love affair with the Taliban, didn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Rambo 3.
Rambo 3. Yeah.
Oh, how things changed.
Yeah.
I'll just go through another couple of comments, and then we'll come to your next one, John. So, True Lies is a great one. Tierra Carrera was always a great one this year. I think she was in, I'm not sure if you remember it, there was a TV show she was in called Relic, I think called Relic Hunters. It used to be on Sky in the UK. I enjoyed that. Sort of cut price Indiana Jones with a good looking woman in it.
Yeah.
Really good description. Hello, Peter.
Hi, Peter.
Oh,
I bet I could see her.
and don't forget the great Dwarf accent. And then, hello, John. Yeah, you, John. Probably next month you might want to watch the next one because we're going to be doing World War II films, and With Eagles Day will certainly appear in one of our three.
Down to it, yeah, definitely.
And the US government cracked the Taliban, so Hollywood paying treated. Yeah. And the Pakistani government as well. How that can do it. So, right, John, which one do you want to do next?
Spartan.
Okay. There we go.
Okay, so this one stars the late great Val Kilmer. I think it's one of his best roles and best performances that he's got on there. So the stories to this one, he plays a government agent who's tasked with finding the president's daughter after she goes missing. His character is, you're never too sure on exactly who he reports to or what his actual allegiances are. He's a military man, but you're not sure if he's still in the military. You're first introduced to him in this scene where he's helping out on the assessment for Delta Force recruitment and selection. But you're never sure, is he a Delta Force operator? Is he a member of the staff? Is he just someone that's helping out? Because he then quickly gets called to stand to and is spirited away to Washington, where he's told that the president's daughter's gone missing and he's there to help. He's there to find her. He's assigned a rookie from a newly minted Delta Force operator, played by Derek Luke, to help out with the search. And initially, you sort of think to yourself, why would, a little bit like your point, Aaron, about Daniel Craig in Casino Royale, you sort of think, why would they task or assign a rookie to support an experienced field agent in such an important task? But as the story progresses, you might start realizing why they might have done that as you sort of go along. So his investigation eventually leads to a sex trafficking ring, and the president's daughter's fallen victim to that. So this film, I think, predates Taken by maybe 3-4 years, perhaps something like that. So it's probably the first one that I can think of that brought that kind of storyline to the big screens. And there's a really good scene where they stage quite an elaborate ploy to sort of spring or, to rescue one of the sex traffickers who's being transported from one prison to another. I don't really want to spoil exactly what happens in it, but it shows just how ruthless this character is and what lengths they'll go to achieve the mission. So that's the guy on the left there. They sort of spring him from jail as such, but it's all an elaborate sort of ploy to gain his trust and then get further information. The movie's quite downbeat. It does move into sort of conspiracy, so all is not what it appears to be. And if I say anything else, I'll kind of spoil it. It's very much one that's best to go into cold and just enjoy the twists and turns. It's written and directed by David Mamet, who went on to create The Unit. I don't know if you guys have seen that or remember that.
Yes. Yeah.
Series about Delta Force. And there's a little bit of crossover in some ways between this film and The Unit, in that both are done by David Mamet. Both had Eric L. Haney, who was a Delta Force soldier, as technical advisors. And also there's one character shares the same name. The main character, who's played by Dennis Haysbert in The Unit, was called Jonas Blaine. And there's a colonel called Colonel Blaine in this, who you just meet very briefly. So I think he's just kind of, I wouldn't say it's the same character, but he's kind of, you can see he's imported some of the ideas that he had in Spartan and developed them further into the unit. But yeah, it's again, I can't really say too much. There's some. I think the reason why this is again one of my favourites is it has a nice little touches of tradecraft in there that again strike me as real and authentic. There's a scene where Val Kilmer and Derek Luke's character, he assigns Derek Luke just to stand as a kind of overwatch, mounting a bit of surveillance in a public spot. And he gives him a chain that he's got and says, right, you're walking the dog. You're just out there, you're just taking in the air. And he gives him a little cover story, which is what you would need. If you're doing something like that, you need to have a reason to be there. Not necessarily one that would stand up to a massive interrogation, but just a quick kind of response if somebody challenges you. And I thought that was quite realistic that they at least showed that element to it. He gave him a cover story, said that, right, that's what you're doing, off you go. And he does that throughout the film. There are these little touches where he takes on a different kind of role or persona to sort of infiltrate an area and gather information from people. There's another little scene where after the president's daughter's gone missing, they first question her Secret Service agent and accuse him of leaving his post to go and see his girlfriend, or I think it was. He's denying it, saying, no, I was on post all the time. So they get Val Kilmer's character to come in as a ploy and pretend to be another agent who claims that, no, you weren't there when I came to relieve you, to almost put that bit of pressure on him as well. Again, that's a nice little touch. That sort of the false witness idea is something that you'd use sometimes in interrogation sessions in real life. So that was, again, a nice little touch to see some of those little ideas in there. So overall, very good film. It reminds me of some of the older 70s type spy films where there's just that sense of paranoia, the sense that the government aren't the good guys. And it ends on quite a good note. That's where you've seen Val Kilmer's character go on this journey from being very dedicated. He's very much a mission-focused guy. I think he has a line in it. It's just like, look, just tell me where to go. Tell me what you need doing when I get there. And that's it. I'm a worker bee. I don't think about strategy. I do what I'm told, kind of thing. And he quickly comes to perhaps revisit that sort of thought process, but in a kind of more realistic kind of way, I think. So yeah, highly sort of recommend it if you like downbeat sort of thrillers with just enough sort of action in it as well. Has anybody seen it? Anyone else seen this one?
I've seen it. When did it come out?
That 2004, I think it was. I'm not sure how well received it was overall, or how many screens it ended up on, or even if it got a cinema release. I saw this one. You're talking about your dodgy VHSs and so on. Yeah. I saw this one on a dodgy DVD that I bought in Iraq from one of the local tradesmen that used to come on to camp and sell DVDs for like $1 a time. And they'd just be in these little floppy cases. Sometimes they'd have poster art on there, sometimes not. But this one happened to be a very, very good copy, almost like a proper rip somewhere. So this is where I saw this one.
So during this time, Val Kilmer he was still like a headliner, but his films weren't hitting big anymore, were they? He was still like a star.
Yeah.
So I sort of discovered another little gem. I think it was around this sort of time, 2004, something like that. Yeah. The Salton Sea.
Yeah, that's great. That's really yeah.
Yeah, another really good movie of his, which really flew under the radar.
Yeah, I
think, and this it seems like this is probably the same thing.
I would say that's a good sort of comparison, if you like, in terms of that. I suppose that maybe that kind of budget and also that kind of tone to it in certain ways. I think Salton Sea was quite a relatively sort of downbeat film from what I can remember. Kind of quite noirish kind of film, and this has definitely got those sort of undertones to it as well. Yeah, definitely around about that era. I think he was it seemed like he just moved into more of the kind of more independent, lower budget or mid-range budget type films at that time. I can't really think of anything else he was doing around about then, to be honest with you, apart from this and the Salton Sea. I can't think of anything else. think he'd come off Thunderheart and things like that were a lot earlier. I think they were 90s, weren't they?
Yeah. He peaked in like the early mid-90s, didn't he? And then sort of really trailed off, had a few flops and a few fallouts. And
yeah. I think Island of Dr. Moreau was probably that kind of split from the studios, perhaps, and then he sort of moved into the. And then I think that was earlier as well. Heat, I was just thinking there, that was like 95. So that was a long time before.
One of his great roles.
Yeah, really good in that.
Yeah.
Someone made a good point about Heat, just to sort of go off on a bit of a tangent, but they said you only see Val Kilmer smile twice.
Oh.
And in both occasions, it's just before one of the worst moments of his life. So, as he walks out the bank, he gives that grin, doesn't he? And then he just stops the poppers. And then the next time you see him is when he sees Charlene at the end. And then she says, go, So he said that's it. 2 smiles, and it signals the worst time in his life.
Wow.
So, that's quite, good sort of spot.
That.
No, I didn't notice that. Have you seen this one, Stephen?
I've not. No, I'm afraid I've not even heard of it. But it sounds good, actually. Sounds very good. I've seen Val Kilmer in Heat, obviously. He's great in that.
Yeah.
I'll just go one more comment and then we'll go on to Stephen's. Barton doesn't get enough love yet.
Yeah, someone else. Nice one, Jeremy.
So what I'll do is I'll just get rid of this. Stephen, which of yours do you want to do next?
I think I'll go. I'll leave my favorite for last. So I'll go. The Spy Who Came In from the Cold as the next one. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys have seen this one.
Yes.
It's So it's I think it's the first John le Carré book to be adapted for the screen, done in the late 60s. They made an interesting choice to do it in black and white at the time, when the sort of rage was to do everything in color. But it gives it this sort of seedy, grey. You really feel the sort of the sort of dark shadows and everything of the world they live in. So of course it takes place at the height of the Cold War. It starts off in Checkpoint Charlie. Sorry. It starts off at Checkpoint Charlie, where basically Richard Burton is the station chief for MI6. Doing an operation, and basically they're trying to get someone to defect, and it goes wrong. He's then recalled back to London, where C, or Control, so the head of the service, basically gives him a new assignment. And so they basically make it look as if Richard Burton's character has got, has because of the failure of the operation, he's developed alcoholism, and he has to be thrown out of the service. This turns out all to be, without spoiling it too much, deep cover, because he then, basically, he becomes a down and out, but that is all to infiltrate a local communist party and get into relations with a party activist. Thereby, he then gets the attention of local people working for the KGB. And I think the photo you just saw was one of the British KGB turnovers, played by Robert Harris, who, of course, goes on to play, Fudge in the Harry Potter films, and among other things. So they think that Richard's character is... his character's name is Lemus. They think that Lemus could be a potential defector for them. So then he's taken to East Germany, to where they want to see if he's a genuine defector or not. The object, however, of the mission is to set up to make it look like one of the high-ranking members of the Stasi is a Western mole, even though he's actually not. So their job is to frame him. And I won't say any further because I'll ruin the plot. But yeah, it's great. It's basically like, I don't know how many Le Carre books or films you guys have seen, but they're very much about the trade craft. The long sort of stakeout that people aren't quite what they seem. The sort of changing plots, the periods where nothing seems to be happening, and then suddenly it all comes together. And things that people having to make sort of very difficult moral decisions, and it's sometimes in order to get the objective, and it's a deeply sort of ruthless world of the sort of intelligence services in the Cold War. So yeah, I think it's a really good film, and it's with some great sort of portrayals, and it's all very understated. I think it's for want of a better word, it's very English. It's not. I think a lot of later British spy films are quite influenced by Hollywood and so on, whereas this is still very understated. It feels much more, at least what I imagine, the sort of post-war British intelligence services might have been like. And of course, John Le Carre himself was an ex-spook at the time before he started writing. So yeah, no, I think I definitely recommend it.
Stephen, John, have you seen the film, or have you read the book?
No, neither. Not read the book nor seen the film.
Yes, as Stephen says, it's a really good film, a really good book. Sorry, you were going to say something, Steve?
No, so I've not seen it either, but yeah, it sounds really good. It does sound really good, and I do like all the imagery I'm seeing there as well. So definitely need to check that out.
It's not. I mean, it's there is action there, but it's not like a Bond or some of the other films. It's much more about the tradecraft, but it is very tense all the way through. I found it very engrossing because there is a sort of without. It's one of those films where without really seeing the action, you are made to feel like there is sort of imminent, very unpleasant death around the corner if you do it, especially once he gets to East Germany and he's sort of meeting with the, again, without spoiling it too much, but with the sort of communist security services. And you do get a real sense of, these aren't people you want to have a picnic with. So they're pretty unpleasant sort of people, but it's yeah. Anyway, without rambling too much,
it's a really good adaptation of the original novel as well. It's reasonably faithful, and interestingly, this film is the first time you get to see George Smiley on screen, where he's played by the actor Rupert Davies, who at the time was probably more famous for playing Maigret on the BBC.
Yes, yeah, he very brief role. It pops on. And I think it's good because he looks very different to the later portrayals of Smiley in the other adaptations. But I think he's more faithful to the how he's described in the books as looking like a sort of a bookie, very sort of yeah.
Yeah, and one interest, and because of the fact that Smiley is portrayed in this film, when they came to adapt the first George Smiley book about a year or two later, because it was being made by another studio, they couldn't use the name Smiley, so they had to change the character's name. In the film's called The Deadly Affair, and it's an adaptation of Call for the Dead. It's all right, but it's nothing compared to Spy Who Came In From the Cold. I wonder that might be as much to do with the fact that whilst Call for the Dead is a reasonably good book, The Spy Who Came From the Cold is a far better book. So the adaptations have sort of the same qualities as the books they're adapted from.
Yeah.
I'll have to keep an eye out. Definitely keep an eye out for this one. See if it's on streaming somewhere.
I'd imagine it's if it's not on Netflix, I'd imagine it's on Amazon somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, I think actually you can get quite a reasonably good quality on free sort of stuff if it's not, or just Googling as well, like on Archive and it's because I think it's quite easy to access.
Yeah.
If WS has got anything else to say, I'll go into my second choice. So, this one sort of rounds out the sort of trio of, in terms of British spy novelists, because there's obviously Ian Fleming with James Bond, John le Carré with George Smiley, and then you've got the third name who's not that well known today, sadly, but who should be, which is Len Dayton with the the Unnamed Spy books, which then got turned into films, starring Michael Caine and Harry Palmer. The first one, which is The Icarus File, and this follows Harry Palmer, who is at the start of the film in military intelligence, and he gets transferred to a small department in the Home Office, led by Major Dolby, who's played by Nigel Green, and he is then tasked with trying to find a missing government scientist. And and Kane, Harry Palmer finds this scientist via a sort of intelligence trader called Blue Jay, who sells the scientist back, but it turns out the scientist has gone through a process of brainwashing, it seems, that has stopped him from making him completely useless as a scientist. And he ends up, and so Kane ends up Harry Palmer, I should say, ends up sort of following this, and I won't go any further into sort of plot because of spoilers, but there's double crosses and scenes of torture. And what's interesting about the film is that people commonly describe George Smiley as the anti-Bond. I think that Harry Palmer is best described as that, because whilst this is not as action-packed as a Bond film, there is action in here, and it's very much done in sort of kitchen sink drama. There's a very famous scene where Harry Palmer is fighting with Blue Jay's henchman, who's kind of named House Martin, and you see it through the windows of a red telephone box. It's really well done. And there's also a sort of anticlimax scene when there's a raid on a factory, and there's nothing there except a bit of tape with the word Icarus on, and it's really well done. And also, Harry Palmer is a man who likes to cook, likes to drink, but he likes to finer things. So he buys a particular brand of mushrooms, which are, as one of the character points out, are 5 pence more expensive. And the character says you're just paying for the brand, and Harry Palmer says no, they really do taste better. And so you very much get a very different sort of element from Bond there, and you have here the two main characters, the two main senior officers. So Dolby here on the left is played by Nigel Green, and on the right you've got Colonel Ross played by Guy Dolman. And I rewatched the film recently, and there's a line in there that until now I hadn't noticed, where Ross says back to Harry Palmer about Dolby, Major Dolby doesn't have my sense of humour. And he's right. Ross does, in fact, have a very good sense of humour. It's very dry, whereas Dolby really doesn't. And I've seen this film, I think first I saw this film when I was about 10 years old, and I've seen it multiple times since then. Watching it a few days ago, that's the first time I noticed that's true, that Ross actually has a sense of humour. And this is the scene where we have the handover between Blue Jay and Dolby with the scientist, and this is where they're discovering what what might be involved in the ipcris process. And you might notice in the centre of the screen now, Gordon Jackson playing one of the minor characters, who's probably more famous to some people for playing, I've forgotten his name now, in Upstairs, Downstairs, and Butler, but also, at least to me, most famous for playing George, what's his name now, in The Professionals, George Cowley, who's the sort of intelligence chief there. And one interesting thing about the film is that they'll describe it as the anti-Bond. It was made by quite a lot of people who were making Bond films at the time. So the producer was Harry Saltzman, who, along with Cubby Broccoli, were the producers of the Bond films in the Connery era. This was made in 1965 and came out about the same time as Thunderball. The production designer is Ken Adams, who's probably most famous for designing all the huge sort of village layers in Connery and Moore films. And the editor is Peter Hunt, who was very famous for editing the Bond films and also for directing On Her Majesty's Secret Service with George Lazenby's Bond. So it's an interesting fact that you've got a film that is the anti-Bond film being made by mostly Bond film production crew. And not to give away, this is the torture involved. And one thing I will say is that the film is a lot more straightforward in terms of its plotting than the book is. The book is a lot more of a sort of Cold War spy novel or spy story, whereas the film is a more straightforward spy thriller, if that makes sense. Because there's stuff going on about the Pacific, nuclear testing in the Pacific, and the people in Harry Potter, all the unnamed spies past, being involved in this, and the film is a lot more plotted more straightforward in its plotting. Have either of you three seen the film or read the book? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the only one who hasn't.
No, it's very good.
Sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say about this sort of anti-Bond type idea. You know, he's very much a working class character, isn't he, Harry Palmer?
Yeah.
And there's always that little bit of friction between him and his bosses. You know, and the way they perhaps belong to the old school type set, and kind of look down on him at that tiny little bit. So that was always quite interesting.
Yeah, actually, in the film, Harry Palmer is more sort of working class than he is in the books, because in the book he's a grammar school. So he's in this film. There's never mentioned. I don't think in this film or any or the subsequent two films, you get the idea that Harry Palmer went through grammar school. He just went through a normal school and then went into the army and got in trouble and then got recruited by Ross.
I was going to say, isn't there a suggestion that he did either not quite petty crime, but some form of, he got into some bother, didn't he, while he was serving in the military? Yeah,
in the film, he makes a sort of reference to the fact that Ross references this and Dolby do, and then in a bit of dialogue with the female character Jean, Palmer mentions the fact that he was doing something that was making a lot of money off the German army, and the British army didn't like it, and then that's how Ross found it. So, yeah. It's very much sort of anti-Bond, and I say the subsequent two films because the two films that happened to have Michael Caine playing a character called Harry Palmer in the 1990s do not count, in my opinion. They are not any good. They're Bullet to Burn, Something to Shanghai, and Bullet to Moscow, maybe, and they're really not good. And they have, of all things, Jason Connery playing Harry Palmer's second in command. So they're not really, they're really not up to much.
Just from seeing the pictures and the idea of the working class guy who's a bit of a scally being recruited, do you think this was a bit of an influence on the Kingsman? Like Colin Firth's character wears the specs and the suit and everything. Is it? Or am I way off there?
Yeah. In fact, I think Matthew Vaughn, the director, put Michael Caine in that film directly as a reference to Harry Palmer. Because at the end, when he's trying not to spoil the Kingsman film, there's the bit just before Michael Caine's character dies, and his accent changes. And I think that from what I've read, is Matthew Vaughn making a reference to the Harry Palmer films,
Right.
and particularly Harry Palmer's character in the Kingsman film, the first one at least.
Seemed like the Kingsman films drew a lot of influences from several sort of areas, didn't they? In the from the sort of the 60s type spy films, again with the glasses, the suits, to I suppose more of the kind of more outlandish sort of thrillers that we've had a little bit more recently, with the big action set pieces. But yeah, I get what you mean about Eggsy was very much a sort of working class lad, wasn't he? That was thrust into this world full of other people who didn't think he belonged as such. It's good films.
If nobody else has got anything else to say about Victory's File, I know, John, what time have you got to go?
Around probably about 8 o'clock sort of time, 15:15. I should be okay. But
okay, well, what I'll do is,
if not, there's no. Oh, sorry.
No, what I'll do is I'll let you do your choice next, so you can go.
I should be okay, mate. We've got plenty. I think we've got plenty of time. I'm just doing Dad's taxis tonight, so I'm making a phone call. So
okay,
it might be a bit later yet, so it might be all right.
Okay. Well, in that case, Steve, what's your last choice is?
I feel like I need to have a bit of a disclaimer.
Okay.
I haven't picked the Bond film.
Right.
Sacrilegious. Absolutely. I love Bond.
Yeah.
I do love Bond.
Yeah.
But I've found it very hard to pick just one Bond sort of thing. I wouldn't have been able to do it. So I've gone way off track, and I've found a real little oddity of a movie. So yeah, this is my pick. Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. This is an odd movie for sure. It's the story, the partially true or perhaps 100% true, we don't know, story of Chuck Barris, who was the creator of the worst TV ever that we're still suffering from now, and also possibly at the same time was a CIA hitman. Chuck Barris created the dating game, which we then did as Blind Date over here. And he created the Gong Show, which is a bit like Britain's Got Talent, X Factor kind of thing, where people come on and perform, and they're usually a little bit weird, usually oddballs, and they would basically buzz to kick them off the show. The judges would buzz to get rid of them, kind of thing, and it was more about laughing at the people, I think, than anything. So he created that stuff, and had a bit of a dodgy life. He was a bit of a drinker, a bit of a womanizer, getting into bar brawls and things like that. And over the course of this, he gets recruited by George Clooney's CIA handler, who brings him in as an assassin. And his cover for the assassinations he was doing was the locations when he would chaperone couples on the dating game, a bit like on Blind Date when they get sent away on a holiday. This was the 60s, so he had to chaperone them. He would then be sent to countries where he would have jobs to do for the CIA. He'd have people to take out. So the guests were getting taken to strange locations where he would have to go and kill people. It's got a great cast. Sam Rockwell is hilarious in the film, and quite sad as well. Chuck clearly had some problems, as you see in the film. It's like issues with drugs and depression and drink and all the rest of it, which could be this whole thing could be his imagination. He could be playing a trick on us. We don't know. It does play with the idea of it being sometimes a bit of a fantasy. You see it sort of fade into these moments as he's recalling his story while he's kind of out of it in a hotel room at his kind of rock bottom. It's got a great supporting cast around him, like Rutger Hauer comes in, and George Clooney obviously plays the guy who recruits him. Rutger Hauer is another sort of fellow assassin, and Julia Roberts is also in it as a fellow assassin. It's an interesting film, and there's still speculation as to whether he really was what he said, or if he was just taking the mickey out of everyone. I think the CIA have done stranger things, so I could believe it. You think of the MK Ultra stuff and some of the other mad things they've done, like trying to put radios in cats to surveil people and things like that. There's a whole very interesting rabbit hole you can go down if you look up some of the stranger things the CIA have attempted. So I could believe that they did use someone like him as an assassin potentially. It's an odd film. But it's fun, it's funny, and it's quite moving in places as well. It's interesting the way he sort of is reflecting back on his life. Is there anyone else seen this?
I haven't. No, I've not seen this one.
I've not. No.
I saw it again a very long time ago, probably when I was at secondary school, when it was playing on the BBC on a Saturday night. I can remember bits and pieces of it, but not very well.
Well, yeah, it's definitely worth a watch, and it has some fun bits as well with the sort of spy killer conventions. It's like it's half a biopic that you can totally see is what he really did, evidently, and then the other half is an interesting little spy story in its own right. Yeah, I'd recommend it.
Definitely, I'll keep an eye out for that one. Yeah, I've heard of it, but never got around to watching it. It's just one of those films but seeing that you've given it a recommend, I'll keep an eye out now.
Yeah.
If nobody else has got anything else to say, I'm sorry, go on, Stephen.
Oh no, I'll just say likewise. I'll have to look out for it.
In that case, I'll move on to John's final pick.
Yes.
Just wait a second. And what was your final one, John?
The Bourne Supremacy.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. So this was Matt Damon's second outing as Jason Bourne. And I think this is the best of the Bourne films. And I think this is the one where the Bourne films got into their stride. I thought the first one was a decent enough action film, but I think Paul Greengrass took this up to just that next level in terms of sort of mood, tone, action, and the direction that the sort of franchise went in after this. So for those that haven't seen it, and without any spoilers, Jason Bourne is now living with Marie in Goa, just keeping his head down, out of the way, until Carl Urban's Kirill turns up to assassinate them both, but only kills Marie. So Bourne's now basically out for revenge and also trying to find out why the CIA won't just leave him alone. And as part of his investigations, he finds that it's linked to an old scheme where $20 million went missing that was linked to some Russian oligarchs. And also this conspiracy was linked to Bourne's first mission that he carried out, his first assassination. So as he's trying to find and track down what's the people responsible for Marie's death and try and get the CIA off his back, he's also trying to unearth little bits of his own past that he can't quite remember. So there's a scene there when he takes Julia Stiles' character from the first film and interrogates her to say, right, what was my first mission? And she's contradicting everything that he's being told. So he's trying to piece together his past as he goes along. I think this film, good fight scene there with Martin Costas, I think is the actor's name is, where Bourne goes to visit and question one of the last remaining Treadstone agents, who's just basically, it seems like he's just living his life now after being kind of cast aside. A nice scene with that. This guy's, he's only in it for this scene, but I think he plays a really good role. The character called Jada, I think the character's name was. So an assassin just as capable as Bourne, but who does nice little tricks when Bourne Bourne tells him, chucks a set of plastic cuffs at him and says, right, cuff your hands. And immediately goes like this to put him behind. He's like, no, in front. He's like, all right, yeah, you caught me, kind of thing. Trying to play these little tricks. And a really, really good fight scene at this point where Jada starts off with his hands bound fighting, finally gets free. And it's got that kinetic style that Greengrass brought to the fight scenes that I think were a little bit better than the first film, certainly. Just that, maybe a bit overused now, but that kind of quick cut, shaky cam, but you can still actually see what's going on in this fight scene. So, nice, down and dirty, brutal fight scene. Very much in the spirit of, if you think about when we talked about the Craig era Bond films, very much you can see where they took that sort of inspiration for some of the down and dirty fight scenes that Craig was involved in Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. Very much from the Bourne films. It's set largely in Berlin and Moscow, which for me makes it feel even more like a spy film. It's just got that atmosphere almost, although it's not set in the Cold War, but it has that dark atmosphere to it. So yeah, for me, definitely one of the best Bourne films. Overall, with some of the best sequences in it, chase scenes and escapes.
I'd have to agree. I think this is the best Bourne, definitely. This is the peak. Great, the great chase scenes as well, where the shaking out. I think it might be the first film that has that famous, that gets used all the time now, that gimmick where the car comes in from the side and crashes into the car that the main character's in.
Yeah.
It just comes straight into the side window. I think it's the first time I ever saw that was in this film, and it jumped me out of my seat when that happened. It's a shocker. And I'm very anti shaky cam, but in this one it works. This one, they didn't overdo it. This is where they're first experimenting with the style, and it adds a little bit of added impact. It makes you feel like you're in the court, sort of in the middle of it, being sort of shoved around. And I think it became a bit like with some of the wire work that they did in The Matrix. It became something that got spoiled later on by people doing it excessively and kind of doing it badly. But this is definitely the one that's really good.
Yeah, I think Greengrass was. I think he'd said to Damon at one point, because he was a little bit concerned that he was going to miss some little gesture, and he's just like, just play it, we'll get it, So I think he had that kind of documentarian sort of style or approach to some of the filming. The chase scenes are great in this, and the score's fantastic. I think it really, really matches the scenes, really matches the intensity, the direction as well. I can't think what the composer's name was. I think it's a British composer. He's done quite a lot of films, did all of the Bourne films. I think I wouldn't say it's a better film, but the only scenes that are perhaps better is the train station scene in the third film, the Waterloo station scene, where they're moving through the crowd, and he's coaching Paddy Considine on what to do to avoid the various surveillance and the various hit teams that are after him. And so that's the only other thing that's maybe better than some of the scenes in this, but as a whole, I think this film's the best one overall.
Yeah, I have seen this and the two other Bourne films, and I do really enjoy this. I remember that fight scene. I also remember the bit where he puts a roll of newspaper into the toaster. Yeah. I've got to say, I have read the original Ludlam trilogy, and I actually prefer the films to the books. It's one of the rare occasions. I think it's not because I think those books are bad, just so I don't go on with Robert Ludlam's writing, whereas the films are really good.
I think they seem to kind of subvert the Ludlam books in a way, because from what I can remember of the Ludlam book, the idea was that Bourne's the amnesiac and he comes out of it. And initially he thinks he's a bad guy. He thinks he's a terrorist. And then he kind of realizes, oh no, I'm one of the good guys. I'm a CIA agent. Whereas the films seem to subvert that, in that he thinks he's a good guy, but then he really thinks, no, I'm an assassin. I'm actually one of the bad guys. So I quite like that flip with the tone of the films. But I think the Ludlam ones were very much of the 80s, very much. I think they did an adaptation, didn't they, with Richard Chamberlain, maybe?
Yes. Yeah.
I think back in the 80s. So very much of the time. But yeah, this kind of brought him back to date. And I think was, like you said, Steve, about the shaky cam, I think this was very good at the time with the idea of this gritty, down and dirty kind of spy thing. But I think then we had too much of that as well. And we lost that with the Bond films. You had every spy had to be a kind of tortured agent who was working for a corrupt government as such. Where sometimes, do you know what? It's actually good just have a hero as a spy. And a bit of fun with it. But I think these struck the right balance at that time, and I think they still stand up now.
Yeah, definitely. On a personal note, I took a life skill from this one that I still find very handy. I call it Jason Bourning. So when you see someone in town that you don't want to speak to, go Jason Bourne mode. Cut across people, sort of walk alongside a bus that's moving slowly, works a treat. And that inspired me. I got that from this movie. Like, oh shit, ex-girlfriend, go. Walking alongside the bus, using reflections in the windows to watch out for people on the other side of the road, things like that. All came from Jason Bourne. So thanks, Jason.
Do you hear the soundtrack in your head when you do it, though?
Yeah,
as well?
yeah. Moby kicks in and I'm off.
You were going to say something, Stephen. Sorry.
Oh no, it's all right. It's gone.
Sorry, mate.
No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Steve talking about his hard targeting.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just do a couple of comments and then we'll go on to Stephen's last choice. So. And then Bourne cinematic introduction, changed fight scenes, harder hitting, grittier, dirtier, beautiful violence. Yeah. And as been said before, you would not have got Casino Royale as it was without the Bourne films. They really did change things. So just wait a second. And then we'll pop to the Stephen's last one. So there we go, Stephen.
Yes. So I thought the top one would be Take a Tailor Soldier Spy. So it's another Le Carre adaptation. Probably the best. It's not as good as the 1970s series, if you guys have seen that, but it is, I think, a very good and faithful adaptation. So this one, of course, it's clearly heavily based around the whole Kim Philby saga of a high level Russian mole at the height of the Cold War, right at the top of MI6, and having to find out who this is. So it starts off in in Hungary, where Mark Strong's character is sent in to identify a Hungarian communist agent who might be looking to defect, and says he has information about who this mole is in the heart of British intelligence. It then turns out this is all a trap, and it's actually Mark Strong is captured, and it's a whole disaster, and it leads to a big purge of the whole of the Secret Service, with the head of MI6 having to resign. Gary Oldman's character, who plays George Smiley, the main character, has to resign, and it all comes under new management. This, however, through various reasons, George Smiley comes to realize why this is happening, and that there is that the service has been compromised, and so he is then brought back in by the minister in charge of the Joint Intelligence Committee to do a top secret investigation and find out who is the traitor. So, which he does, and again, it's very what's the word? You really it really makes you inhabit the world of the intelligence services in the late 60s, early 70s. It's just, I think what I love about the film is it just you can almost feel the cigarette smoke and the damp and the cheap whiskey and things just oozing out of the screen. And it's in the sort of world of all the sort of deep cover and I think what's done well is it really gets into, of course, a lot of almost everyone is somehow a sort of broken person outside the service. And it sort of really shows you that the lifestyle of being undercover, constantly pretending to be other people, how it does hollow out everyone involved. But anyway, it goes and without spoiling too much, basically he has to go around and piece together very slowly and then suddenly how it all comes and who's actually the person who's the traitor involved. As I said, it's very much based after the Kim Philby disaster, where, of course, for those who don't know, Kim Philby was actually there's of course John le Carré himself in the right hand corner in the party scene. Of course, Kim Philby was the head of counterintelligence. But was a Soviet agent and had been for about 20 years before he was uncovered. So I think it's a really good film. It's got a fantastic cast. It's obviously Gary Oldman, John Hurt, Mark Strong, Colin Firth, Benedict Cumberbatch, and loads of others. All giving really top performances, I think it's really solid. I don't know if any of you guys have seen it.
Yeah.
That was almost one of my picks, but I thought no, someone else is bound to choose this anyway, so we'll get to talk about it. But, it's a really good film. I think like the series as well. But I think this is a very good, 2 hours to condense all that down. It's a very good cinematic adaptation. The atmosphere. I think it's the atmosphere of this film that sells it. Like you said, you can smell the fag smoke. You can smell, you can almost feel the beige sort of in everything that's there. Really good film and some great scenes of tension as well. The bit where he's trying to get Benedict Cumberbatch is trying to get the file.
Mm.
And he's, you have to sign a chit and they have to time it so Roger Lloyd Pack rings up, pretend to be his mechanic, so he can kind of smuggle this thing out. And it seems like low stakes almost because you think, just take the file. But they wrapped up that tension so well.
I mean, of course, I should mention, without spoiling it, that there's a whole side plot in Turkey, where Ricky Tarr is basically where he's trying to get this Russian woman, female agent, to defect, and then it all goes wrong, and then they've clearly been portrayed, and the whole MI6 station in Turkey is compromised, and I think it starts with them all being bumped off, like he finds his boss brutally murdered in the office, and it has to, that's a really tense scene how he has to get out, and
I mean, just as a side note as well, maybe not from that particular photograph, but I'd always wanted to see Mark Strong play Bond,
I think actually he'd be a good pick. Actually, I don't know if he's too old now, but I think he definitely could carry it.
Yeah, back in the day, maybe, I think, maybe like 20 years ago, perhaps, or something like that, when he was, I think, I think he missed his chance. I think we missed a decent Bond with that.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, actually, I don't know if you guys have any guesses or picks for who might be the next one, or should there be another one?
I can't say I'm impressed with any of the ones that have been named. I think Cavill was perhaps the closest, but I think even he's not quite right for it in my mind.
Yeah.
I just don't think he's quite. I think he made a fantastic spy or action hero, but I don't know. There's just something I'm not sure. I can't quite get behind him as Bond. Not quite. Same way I can't with Tom Hardy.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they need to think outside the box again.
Yeah.
Like when they first cast Connery, no one knew who Connery was. He was a nobody. Like they need to sort of start trying to discover people rather than ram people down our throats all the time. They need to start looking for people, I think. And someone like Bond, cast someone who's completely unknown. Otherwise, they're carrying the baggage of everything they've done into it. So they never. Henry Cavill as Bond would still always be Henry Cavill. He wouldn't be Bond. Whereas for a long time, Sean Connery literally was Bond until he then afterwards became Sean Connery, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Because he was just a bodybuilder or something, wasn't he?
Yeah. He'd been a bodybuilder. I think his main job had been a milkman, and was he in the Navy for a bit as well?
Merchant Navy, I think.
Yeah, just a normal bloke who they're just in photos and they liked him and he's got some charisma and they were like, right, let's turn him into a star. I think that was a good discovery, and they used to make discoveries like that. Then like Michael Caine, who we were talking about earlier, and they don't seem to be making them anymore.
Yeah, they all seem to come off a production line, don't they? They all seem to be a kind of. There don't seem to be many new opportunities as such for anybody to kind of break out into these big roles anymore. They're already established names. I mean, I think the newest one might be that Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Yeah.
Say he's perhaps the freshest face out of everybody they've suggested so far, but even he's been about for a while now.
He's been around probably close to 20 years now, hasn't he? With like Kick-Ass and that was quite a long time ago.
Yeah, and done some big films.
Yeah,
so I'm not really too sure. I think maybe they could. I think with Craig was quite a success because I think he'd only really done a couple of films. He was mainly known for TV, like Our Friends in the North. I can remember him being in then. So maybe they need to look for television actors, perhaps, who've and try and pull them from there.
They could probably even. I suppose there's a case for just going open cast, or just if as you say you want to discover someone, as you say, rather than just someone we already know.
Yeah, that's what I'd prefer to see that. I'd see more of that in general in the movies.
Yeah, I'll just come with the comment. Great film. Mark Strong is the MVP today. He's a good portion of it. He's in a good portion of it. Yes. When this film came out, I had long before this read the original book and watched the 70s TV show, and I was a big fan of it. And whilst I don't think this is anywhere near as good as the TV version of Alec Guinness, and I don't think Gary Oldman is anywhere near as good as Alec Guinness, I do like the fact that in the film they do put in scenes or in the book, like the fact that when Smiley actually does meet the minister, where that's in the book, but it's not in the TV show, and you get this all nice element of Smiley's personal relationship with the minister via his wife, Anne. He sort of it's sort of going through. It's sort of continues one of the sort of themes for the novel, and it's not as well portrayed, I don't think, in the original TV series, whereas it is very well portrayed in this film.
Yeah, I totally agree. I do think they. I don't know if it's in the books, but I think they did miss not having a scene with Anne because I always remembered the last scene with I forget the name of the actress, Peter O'Toole's wife. But,
Sean, somebody, is it? Sean
yes.
Phillips, is that right? Or am I?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, that's it, Sean Phillips. Yeah, no, I think she's very good. And yeah, I mean, I think I did like Colin Firth as Bill Hayden, although I think again he didn't quite have the sort of underlying menace I think Ian Richardson brought to the character, particularly in the sort of big reveal. But I think they both did a very good job.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the TV version, Ian Richardson also did the sort of self-pity after he's been caught, after Bill Hayden's been caught a lot better than Colin Firth. It seems sort of more realistic, whereas Colin Firth's in those scenes seems a bit more sort of seems like he's actually acting as opposed to Ian Richardson, where it just seems natural the way he's reacting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think yes, because he's almost Colin Firth is almost. I think also is sort of too resigned, whereas Ian Richardson is sort of feels visibly angry and bitter and all the rest of it. You know, when it comes to it, and then but he's sort of unrepentant, whereas I think Colin Firth is a bit too apologetic, which is more like the real Kim Philby, who was who never sort of recanted for what he'd done and never really. I think he was confronted by one of his juniors actually about, look what you've done, and you've cost dozens of people's lives who trusted you, and then basically he was just utterly indifferent. So he's not a pleasant person at all. And I think Ian Richardson did, sort of kept more true to that in the series. But as I said, I think Colin Firth was a good pick as well of sort of current actors.
Actually, one thing about Philby is the reason why John le Carré had to leave the intelligence services is because Philby gave his name was one of the people that Philby gave up. So he was.
Yes, that's right. And I think wasn't he based in Beirut or something when it all kicked off, and he had to go straight to the airport and out. As which I think is the sort of Turkey scene is based on.
Yes.
Realizing they're all compromised.
Yeah, and years later, in the late 80s, just before Philby died, he actually offered John le Carré to come to Moscow and have dinner with him, and he refused outright. So even sort of 20 odd years later, John le Carré hadn't forgiven Philby for what he'd done.
Oh, fascinating! Yeah, I don't blame him, to be honest.
If there's nothing else anybody's got to say, I'll move on to my final pick. That's all right. This one probably won't come as a surprise to anybody, as you've already had one Bond film on. This one, the original Bond film, Dr. No. So this is 1962, first ever Bond film. They're not the first Bond adaptation. Casino Royale had been adapted by CBS in 1954, and there'd been actually a radio version of Moonraker, with Bond being played by Bob Holness, who people watching this, if you're from Britain and you're a bit older than I am, will probably remember him as the host of Blockbusters. So he played Bond in 1957, I think it was, for South African radio. And so this is obviously the first ever Bond film, and the plot is very simple. Bond is sent off to Jamaica after the local head of station is killed and files are stolen from his office. And in the process, he discovers that his predecessor was looking into Julius Snow, who owns an island off the coast of Jamaica. And I am going to spoil the plot here, purely because this film is now almost over 70 years old now, and 60 odd years old. So I don't think I can spoil it. Essentially, Dr. No is has got a set up a sort of a facility where he's wrecking the directional the directions of the rockets being sent out by NASA from Cape Canaveral, and causing them to land in the sea and land all over the place. And he's doing this in the name of Spectre, and so Bond, in the process, goes to investigate the island, where he meets Honey Ryder, played by Ursula Andress, in probably one of the most famous scenes in the Bond film, when she comes out of the ocean. And and then Bond, after sort of investigating the island, gets captured and is introduced to Dr. No, played here by the Canadian actor Robert Wiseman, I think his name was. And then you see Bond having to escape from No's capture and investigate what's going on, and then he finds out the misdirecting of the rockets, and the film ends with a great sort of scene of Bond helping destroy this facility, and you see Dr. No sort of meet his end quite brutally, but by his own hand, effectively. And this is actually a very good adaptation. A lot of the early Connery films, with the exception of You Only Live Twice, are actually reasonably good adaptations. And you really do get a good sense of the sort of overarching sort of threat that Dr. No has over people on Jamaica, which is very much in the original novel. And obviously, when you read the novel, it's very clear that this is inspired by Sax Rohmer's Dr. Fu Manchu. And that's a lot more true in the book than it is in the film. And you also get a nice sort of, though the ending here is slightly changed, you do get the nice fact that No is killed by his own works. For example, in the book, he is killed by having a load of a massive pile of bird shit dropped on him, which in the book is just desserts, but wouldn't quite have worked for the film. But overall, it's a really good film. It very much establishes the Bond films as the Bond films, and it does, to my mind, have all the good elements of a Bond film. The action, the exotic locations, and though there aren't too many of them in here, one or two gadgets. I think the only real gadget you get in Dr. No is the Geiger counter to look at radiation. But you also get other elements of the Bond, sort of recurring elements of Bond films. So you have Bond's gun, which is the Wolf PPK, is given to Bond in this film. The character of Q actually appears in the scene as Major Boothroyd, who is technically the same man who Desmond Llewellyn plays throughout the series. He first appears, Desmond Llewellyn first appears in Goldfinger, I seem to remember. And also, you have sort of Bond relationship with Moneypenny and M, very well established in this film, which sort of recurs throughout the series. And it's my favourite Bond film, though I should say On a Majesty's Secret Service is a close runner-up, given that's arguably the most faithful adaptation of the Bond novel. But because Dr. No really does establish the series, establishes most of the things about Bond we know as being James Bond, that's why I chose it.
That's a great pick, mate. I like that one a lot. Yeah. I'm always sort of torn between that one and Thunderball.
I was going to say I'd probably pick Thunderball, but yeah, Dr. No is great as well.
Yeah. I think that, Dr. No or From Russia with Love, I think, but Dr. No is great. It just kicked it all off, didn't it? Just from those stills that you showed there, Aaron, it's got all the ingredients, hasn't it, of all the Bond films that carried on, the exotic locations, the slightly unusual villain and his secret lair somewhere, and also set the blueprint for a load of other films, including the Austin Powers spoofs and everything, didn't it? These sort of hidden locations. So, really good film.
Yeah, one thing I will say is the film is a lot. The plot of the film is a lot more is a lot longer than the book. In the book, Bond arrives in Jamaica, has a bit of a look about, and then I think it's after he's sent a poisoned basket of fruit from Doctor No. He then goes to the island, and so essentially the bit where Bond speaks with the scientist, the one who tries to kill him. From that point up until he has with the woman Miss Tarot, the secretary, that bit of the film is entirely from the film. If you cut that bit out of the film, the book, that essentially is the book plot. So from the attempt to get from roughly where he attempts to be killed with in the film it's a spider, but in the book again it's a massive centipede that tries to kill him. That very Fu Manchu. And from then roughly till Bond going to the island, that bit of the film is entirely added in. But it works well with the plot. Oh, and one more bit is in the book when he saves Honey Rider at the end, he saves her from being killed by giant crabs. Yeah. But if anybody's ever read the Fu Manchu novels, I recommend to you, and you've enjoyed them, go and read Doctor No, because you'll see Ian Fleming is doing a really good homage to Fu Manchu.
Sounds like something that Guy N. Smith might have had a hand in as well.
Yeah.
I actually managed to find an old paperback of Doctor No that coincided with the release of the movie the other day. So I snapped it straight up. Yeah, it's not in great condition, but I'm definitely going to read it. That sounds great.
Is it one of the old Pan paperbacks?
It is, yeah. And it's it's got like the whole thing. It's advertising it's now a film, and it's got a picture of Connery on the front of it.
Yeah, I should say if anybody does see those Pan paperbacks on for sale, buy them because they are really good, especially if they've got the yellow covers, which are the most iconic versions of them.
That's something I do need to do is reread some of the Bond novels and actually start buying them again. So I've got them, seeing that they seem to be tampering with some of the text in some of these books. So if I can find some of the older ones in the secondhand bookshops near me, I'll probably snap them up. Whichever editions, just so I've got the kind of original versions before they get completely sanitized.
Yeah, I'd recommend anybody who's buying them, but as long as they're roughly published before 2020, they won't have been tampered. But if you do get a chance to get some of the older paperbacks, especially the Pan ones, do get them. But also the ones by Coronet from the 80s, because they actually got an introduction from Anthony Burgess, who people know for A Clockwork Orange and sort of a lot of literary fiction. But he was a big fan of the Bond novels, and so they asked him to write. I'm not sure if in those the introductions are individual ones or just a sort of blanket one, but they're well worth getting.
I remember a decent set of, I think it was the 90s they came out. I don't know what editions they were, but they seemed to release a load of Bond novels sometime in the 90s, perhaps. I don't know if it was to coincide with GoldenEye. I can't think what publisher it was, though, or what line of books.
Most likely, I think it would have been Penguin, because every so often they come out with ones. I remember in the 2000s, they did 3 different versions of them. There were, you've probably seen these in the local libraries, sort of big, large print editions. They would have, they'd be white, and they would have a woman on the front in sort of painting of a woman. And then you had the ones around 2006 that came out around the time of Casino Royale, and they were ones, they're different colours, and they had things, they were very much, they were painted. They weren't photo images, but they're really well done. They were sort of harking back to sort of their retro covers. So they have a woman on, and they'd have a gun or cards on the cover, and that was really good. And they actually, those ones had introduction from different writers. So one of them had Charlie Higson, and I think Charles Cummings, who wrote, who's written a few spy novels as well. He wrote an introduction, and William Boyd, who's also gone on to write a Bond continuation novel as well. So those.
Didn't Charlie Higson go on to write like some of the really bad Bond stories, like on His Majesty's Secret Service? I read some little bits about that, and I was like,
yeah,
it doesn't sound like Bond.
No, it's not. That book's a terrible one. I wouldn't read it. But he did write the first 4 or 5 of the Young Bond books, if you ever read those, and they're really good. They're very much set. They're set in the original Bond chronology, but they're set in the 30s when Bond's a schoolboy, and they're really well done. And you get sort of references to elements within the Bond novels, like for example, in the first Young Bond book, Silverfish, there's a reference to a strong man called the Great Donovan, who is Red Grant's father. If you read Much with Love, it's a reference there. And there's Count Lippy. Count Lippy's father appears in one of the other novels, and Count Lippy is the bloke who tries to kill Bond at the beginning of Thunderball. So there's some nice references in there, as well as being really good books as well. So that one you mentioned, Steve, is really not much good. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody.
I thought that was a spoof, when the little excerpts were coming out and saying this is what they've done to Bond. I thought, no way, this can't be real. It's so extreme. It was like, no way. And then looked it up and I was like, yes way, yeah.
Of course, it's the modern day, isn't it? That's what they've got to do.
Yeah. Terrible.
Well, I think given we've been going for just over 2 hours and 20 minutes, I thought I'd bring things to an end. So thank you for everybody for coming on. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, John. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, mate. Pleasure as always.
Yeah. Thanks for having us on.
Thanks.
Great.
Nice to meet you, Stephen.
Oh yeah, likewise, and other Steve.
Cheers, Stephen. Yeah, good to meet you, mate.
And I'd like to thank everybody who appeared in the chat, especially Jeremy. Thank you.
Cheers, Jeremy.
Cheers.
As I say, next month's one will be on World War II films, so you should get a good sort of collection of films that we'll show. And hopefully Stephen can come back for it as well as obviously Steve and John coming back. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will say goodbye, and I will see you. Well, actually, I will see you tomorrow because I'm going to be doing a live stream with my friend Duke, where we'll be reviewing third book in the Aubrey Maturin series, HMS Surprise by Patrick O'Brien. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, bye.
See you later.